Hello and welcome to the Bookcast Club, a podcast for people who love to chat books. I'm Belle and I'm joining you from Naarm, Melbourne in Australia. And I'm joined by the beautiful Jenny, who's coming to us from Norwich in the UK. Hi, Jen.
Hi. Well done. First introduction.
Thank you.
It was smooth. Love it.
Jen, do you want to introduce the theme of the episode? Because I don't want to read out what you've written as the draft
What I've written.
episode title.
Oh yeah, I forgot I did that. I'm not sure we've got an episode title. Maybe I'll save it to the end of the podcast and I'll tell everyone what I actually wrote. Yeah, this is our Halloween episode. I mean, every year we have a Halloween episode and we always kind of discuss how are we going to shape this one. You know, are we going for spooky? Are we going for gothic? Are we doing scary? And Belle would like to be scared. So we're going to try and talk kind of scary horror today. However, I will say I find scary horror quite hard to find. So I don't really have super scary books to talk about, and I think everyone will be safe to listen to this episode.
I think so as well. I think it's been a real task to find something. Yeah, to find a book that is scary. My ideal, like what I was imagining, was a book that I'd be reading at night and that I would be very, very scared going to sleep.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the ideal. Like you're reading at night, cup of tea, it's a bit dark and you're getting spooked. And and I think what my unrealistic expectation was that I would come away from a book with the same feeling you do when you watch a really, really scary movie. You know, and you're struggling to sort of keep thinking about it, struggling to go to sleep.
Maybe we can get into that.
Yeah.
When we'll have a little chat before we start recommending about scary books. Spoiler alert, I find them quite hard to find. I do have some movie recs for everybody though. So yeah, we're excited. This might be a long one. So settle in, everybody. We're going to do current and recent reads though, aren't we? We're going to do a classic. I've only got one to talk about. So I can see that you've got more than one in the notes. So you go first.
My first, in terms of recent reads, my first is We Solve Murders by Richard Osmond, which is the first in his new series. So setting aside his Thursday Murder Club series, which I have only read two or listened to two of. They've been my comfort audiobook for my commute to work for the last couple of months. And I absolutely loved it. After the second book, though, sadly, the narrator for the audiobook has changed. And I haven't really been able to get over it. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Jen. If you've listened to a series, suddenly the voice the books are narrated by Joyce, the first two at least. Like the narrator is Joyce, and the narrator does the voices of the other characters. And so suddenly, because they've changed the actor who's reading the book, all the characters' voices have changed.
So I used to really love, and I don't listen to them anymore for obvious reasons, the Robert Galbraith, so she who shall not be named, the can't remember what the Cormoran Strike books. And the narrator of those was amazing. So I only listened to them in audio. And yeah, I can't. And the reason I listened to them is because I liked the actor that did them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know if they switched actor. I don't think I'd continue either.
After the second book, there was a little, like a prologue where it was Richard Osmond talking to the actor who was the voice of the first two books. Okay. And they were having this really lovely back and forth discussion about the Thursday Murder Club series. And she actually said that she was going to come back for the rest of them. Like he asked her on the prologue if she would come back, and she was like 100%. I'm going to be there for all of them. Oh. And so I was like, oh, great.
Dare I look up why she hasn't? Oh, okay. Leslie Manville. She's quite a famous actress, isn't she?
She must have just got be like a job. She must have got another job and it didn't work out. And it's now another famous actor who was in Killing Eve. She was...
Okay. Hold on, Reddit is going to tell me everything.
Yeah.
Fiona Shaw, is she the new one?
If you look her up, you'll know her face. She is the new one. She's the head of MI5 or something, whatever, in Killing Eve, the TV series. Anyway, I've got very sidetracked here, but
no. And this episode, we're going to make this episode even longer.
But we love Richard Osmond. And I love the Thursday Murder Club series, and I was very excited to hear that he was going to start another series alongside, like he said he wasn't done with the Thursday Murder Club series, but he's brought out this new book that will be the first of a series.
I didn't realise that, this wasn't part of the Thursday Murder Club books, which I haven't read. Ben's actually read them. He really liked them.
They're great. I think they're that's my ultimate cozy read, is a Richard Osmond book. Anyway, this book is called We Solve Murders, first of a new series, and it follows Amy, who's a private security officer currently protecting famous author Rosie D'Antonio, who's a fabulous millionaire who maybe is in her 70s. They sort of don't reveal her age. She doesn't tell people how old she is, living on a private island. And Amy's father-in-law, Steve, is a retired police officer living in a quiet country town in England. Sort of man who enjoys his quiet life, his regular Wednesday pub quiz. He has a daily routine. And when Amy suddenly becomes falsely implicated in a string of murders, Amy and Rosie have to go on the run, and they enlist the help of Steve to solve the murders and discover the identity of an elusive international money smuggler. So they're flying all over the world in Rosie's private jets, and it's a lot of fun. I'm absolutely hooked on these characters and in this new series. I don't know how he does it. I really don't know how he does it. I don't know, expecting to love the characters in this book less than the Thursday Murder Club crew, but it's amazing. He's brilliant writer. Yep, definitely recommend.
This one sounds... Is it terrible to say I haven't read the Thursday Murder Club series because I find old people slightly irritating?
No, I had that reluctance as well. I was like, I don't really want to read about a bunch of old people in a retirement village.
I think that's what's put me off.
But I would listen to the audiobook. I started it because I just thought, this is going to be a bit of a light and fluffy, like airport bookshop read. Every man and his dog seems to own a copy of at least the first Thursday Murder Club book.
Definitely find them in the charity shop.
Yes. No, but it's wonderful. It's not very old people stuff, like they're not. I think they're in this. I want to say it seems like they're in their 60s and 70s. Like it's not old, crumbly,
sprightly old people.
Yes, and like
it's a terrible way to talk about old people.
I know.
I'm going to be old and irritating myself one day, but I'm not ready to be in that headspace. I don't think. Yeah,
no, they're great. They're great. Also, the audiobooks, the first two at least, and then you'll have to go to reading them in physical form.
I've got one book to talk about, and it's kind of a horror book, so
great.
It'll fit in well, I guess. I read Children of Paradise by Camilla Grudova. Now, I think this was longlisted for the Women's Prize, and I remember being excited that it made the long list because it was the only book that came up that had been like on my radar anyway as one that I wanted to read. It wasn't shortlisted. Now, having read it, I think I understand why. So the Paradise is a cinema, and it's like a dated... I've written Art Deco, but I don't know if it is Art Deco. Maybe I've just like imposed my own view that it's an Art Deco cinema. But I'm imagining like an Art Deco cinema, really dated, dirty carpets. They sell beers and popcorn past their sell-by date, and we follow Holly, who gets a job there, and she notices that the other staff that are there kind of congregate together. They don't really talk to her, and they don't go home when the cinema closes. Like, she notices that they all kind of get together and hang out, but she does slowly kind of get in with them, and I guess they're all misfits in a way. And what they do is they sneakily kind of watch films at night in the cinema, almost to the point, like, obsessively. The talk they have is quite obsessive film talk, I would say. And if they're not at the cinema watching films, then they're either like in each other's flats watching films. Well, what happens is a big chain buys the cinema out, and they kind of swoop in, and management swoop in. They change a lot of how things are done at the cinema, and after that it takes quite I guess a sinister turn, and things go awry for the members of staff at the cinema. Yeah, so it ends up being quite dark, and I did enjoy it. It is my kind of book, that sort of sinister contemporary fiction, I guess. When I looked through my list of horror books that I've read, obviously in Storygraph stuff gets tagged as horror that I wouldn't necessarily think of as horror, but I guess they are, because they have horrible elements to them, and this is one that is horror according to Storygraph. And I would kind of agree. But yeah, I did really enjoy it. I could see why it wasn't shortlisted for the Women's Prize. I don't think it's their jam, but it's really good. And I hadn't realised, but I think this is her first novel. But she has a short story collection, which obviously, Story of My Life, I own. It's downstairs and I haven't read it. The Doll's Alphabet. And I have a feeling I probably bought that or was given that because she's kind of compared to Angela Carter and those kind of like, gothic sort of horror writers.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
it's
good.
Weird, but good.
We love a weird book. I've got one more. It's a current read. I think Sarah's talked about it on the pod before. A book called Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield.
Yeah.
I was trying to finish it before this episode because, again, I think it fits into that spooky, unsettling vibe, which I think that's ultimately what I wanted, something that made me feel very unsettled and maybe something a little bit supernatural. Our Wives Under the Sea. So centers on a lady who returns to her wife Miri after a deep sea mission that ended in catastrophe. So I think it was supposed to be a 3-week deep sea mission, and they returned after 6 months of being missing. Yeah, and so the writing is beautiful. It's instantly sort of unsettling, written from the point of view. I think it swaps between Miri and Lee, so that you get each perspective. But she's returned changed, as if she's carrying part of sort of that deep sea back and whatever happened on the submarine or deep sea vessel back with her to dry land. But Julia Armfield's writing has been a bit of a breath of fresh air. Last night when I picked it up, after just, probably a good month of me DNFing and trying to find spooky books, and to come back to beautiful literary writing has been lovely. Instantly feeling a bit unsettled, and I'll definitely be reading it tonight. And I can tell it's one of those books that I might not be able to fall asleep until I find out sort of what's happened. And it's her first book. It's a debut novel. I think she'd written a short story or two beforehand.
Yeah, I was going to mention her short story collection because, again, I own it. No, I haven't read it. It's called Salt Slow, her short story collection. Yeah, I've heard that one's really good. You talking about like enjoying the writing of a literary novel. I'm definitely in need of that. I've read a lot of contemporary, or actually like cozy fiction, and I definitely need to return to some like literary writing.
Yeah, I think I didn't realise how much I missed it as well.
Yeah.
When you read a lot of those cozy, popular books where there's sort of a lot of plot happening, but the writing itself is...
It's not nourishing.
No.
The writing's not
It's really hard to put into words, but instantly within the first, half a page, it was like, I don't know, like a cozy blanket. Just suddenly like, yes, this is back where I need to be.
This is where we take a little break to tell you about all the different ways you can support the pod, most of which are totally free. We'll start with our Patreon. We've changed things up a little, making all our bonus content open to everyone, no matter what tier you're on. A more pay what you can kind of thing. Tiers start at just £2 a month, and joining our Patreon will give you access to all our chat on recent and current reads, DNFs, book prizes, what we're watching, and lots more. You could try our Patreon for free today. We highly encourage a binge listen to our back catalogue of bonus episodes, and take no offence if you choose to cancel afterwards. If you love receiving book mail and personalised recommendations, our top tier is still available. We get you to fill in a survey, and then we tailor our book recommendations to your preferences. Find all the details in our show notes. Now for the free ways to support us that make a huge difference. A really effective and easy way of showing your support is by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. There is a link in the show notes that will take you straight to the Apple Podcast page where you can write a review. If you listen on Spotify, you can very easily give us a star rating. You can also share our posts on social media. We're at Bookcast Club on Instagram and TikTok. You can sign up to our newsletter on Substack, where we share even more book recommendations, our pick of the new releases, and all the latest podcast news. But the best way for us to find new listeners is by you telling your book-loving friends and family about us. However you choose to show your support, we, as always, want to say a huge thank you. We appreciate each and every one of our listeners. So, horror. Where do you want to start? I feel like you need to fill me in on the journey you've had so far.
I feel like it's been probably a good month. So I thought, okay, Halloween episode, we're going to talk about spooky books. I feel like I've read a couple of spooky books in the past, nothing recently. I want to be able to find a book that is going to scare me and leave me feeling spooked and unsettled and scared of the dark. That was the mission. And I scoured Reddit lists of like the scariest books and a few, like websites where they're like, the 100 scariest books or the top 10 scariest books. Made a list, went to the library or went through the library catalogue, picked up so many books and DNF'd so many books.
Oh no.
I know. And so multiple books had appeared in the shortlist for like the spookiest books. I haven't ever read Sarah Waters before.
Okay.
I did. So I started The Little Stranger thinking that's supposed to be scary, but it was a bit too slow. And I realized that I think it's just a little bit spooky. It's not going to be scary enough.
Yeah.
So
there's definitely bits in that book that I remember being scary. But I mean, Sarah Waters writes long historical fiction, like books that you need to kind of get into, and you're going to be in it for a while. Yeah. So I think.
And I was working within a timeline. I had
didn't have time for a slow scare.
I didn't have time to read a very, very long book. And then I picked up Verity by Colleen Hoover from one of those like cute free library, street library things.
Okay.
Because I feel like I'd seen it all over like Instagram and TikTok about it being a bit spooky. And she's obviously in the media at the moment for the movie with the flower girl. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah,
You know the
I know
one.
what you mean.
You know the one.
All sorts of drama going on, isn't
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
With Blake Lively.
Yes. So pick that up, put it down after about 50 pages. Felt like it was like a little bit too much romance, trashy romance, which is not really my thing. So, and I've been told by people that it was scary as well. And I could already tell from the first 50 pages what the twist was going to be. And yeah, no.
I think maybe if you don't read scary books,
yeah,
then
if you're the
maybe
sort of
you'd find
person
it
who
scary.
reads Colleen Hoover, because I don't think she usually writes scary books, then maybe you'd be scared by it. Anyway, another book I picked up was called The Whistling by Rebecca Netley.
I've heard of this one.
It's a gothic horror. It's one I would maybe go back to, but it was just a little bit too slow. It's about a nanny who takes a job on a sort of a spooky island. I think maybe it's somewhere in Scotland. And there's a little girl, and you find out that she's a twin, and the boy, her twin, had recently died. Had potential, a little bit too slow.
Yeah.
So I put it
That
down.
was on my TBR, I can see.
Yeah. I don't know. It might have been good. The one that I stuck with reading, so I was like, I've just got to pick one up. I've got to read one completely because I'm not going to have a book even to talk about at this point. So I read one called The Only Ones Left by Riley Saga. It had a good premise as well. It's like a woman who's returning to care work, like nursing care work, after being investigated for her role in a patient overdosing. And she goes to care for an elderly lady who was suspected of killing her entire family years ago. She's sort of like a local ghost story legend.
Yeah.
And like the setting is a rundown, creaky mansion on the edge of a cliff. So I feel like it should have been the perfect scary story. And the writing wasn't great, but I stuck with it. And there were plenty of twists in like the last third of the book. And it was a bit of a ride. Perhaps like there were one too many twists. Like you thought, okay, like that's enough. And then there was another twist and something else came out. It was enjoyable. It was enjoyable. And I think for people who don't read gothic horror or, more highbrow scary books.
Yeah, his books definitely, I've seen his books recommended a lot on the various kind of horror
They've got a great
channels that I watch.
It's got a great cover.
The house on the mountain, like cliff top.
Yeah. Anyway, it was enjoyable, but not scary. So at that point, that was maybe like 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago, I was at that stage where I had put down a million books, it feels like, probably like 15 books from the library.
This is when Belle messaged me.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm saving mine for the podcast. And she was like, don't tell me them now.
I was like, no.
Like, okay. Yeah.
I was like, I need a book. At this point, I'm not going to be able to contribute anything. So maybe this is a good segue into you talking about your books, because I did find one, and I've got a couple to talk about. But I did read a new one.
Yeah, well, I'm going to point everyone to an episode that I recorded with Jordaline, who's like a horror YouTuber, horror book tuber. Anyway, Jordaline's great. If you find her on YouTube, and me and her recorded an episode probably like 3 years ago now. One of the books I'm going to talk about, we definitely talked about in that episode. I've even gone back to the notes and stolen the blurb that I used in that episode. So you'll hear me repeat verbatim what I said last time. But we did an episode where we basically like climbed the ladder of horror books. So we start off kind of entry level, a little bit spooky, and then we get kind of more scary up to like extreme horror. But I would say from the horror that I've read, I kind of feel that they're either spooky and a little bit scary, or if you're reading extreme horror, what that generally means is they're violent and grotesque. I don't know that I've ever read anything that I found really scary. The books I'm going to talk about have elements to them that are frightening, that have really stuck with me. But I don't think you can do that for a sustained period of time in a novel without it becoming a little bit of a farce. So I do think horror either goes like a little bit spooky, or it extreme kind of violence, and I guess it could be spooky at the same time. But I know that the books that we recommended in that episode as like the scariest, I mean, mine was American Psycho, which I wouldn't say is scary, but I would say is very extreme in its graphic content and its violence. But yeah, in terms of a really scary book, I'm yet to be convinced that they exist. And I know I'm a little bit numb to frights, but I don't think I love a spooky book. I love a spooky feeling, like you say, like being a bit scared to go to sleep. I don't get it with books, really, I have to say. So yeah, I have got some. I've definitely talked about some of these on the podcast before, but there'll be people here that won't have heard me talk about them. So yeah, I'll start with...
Go for it.
So I'm cheating like the whole time with this, but I've got two for this first one recommendation, but they're by the same author. So Thin Air and Dark Matter by Michelle Paver. So I think Michelle Paver is more well known for being a YA writer. Yeah, so she's more well known as a children's author, but she has written, I think, just these two. So she's written these two like ghost stories. They're quite short. They're like 200 pages. She also wrote a full novel called Wakenhurst, which I did really like. But again, it was more historical fiction because it's longer. It's a bit like The Little Stranger, where there's like spooky elements to it, but really it's a historical fiction novel. But Thin Air and Dark Matter, because they're short, they are both ghost stories about survival and isolation. So is it cabin fever they're dealing with, or something more sinister? Is it altitude sickness, or is there really something outside the tent at night? And Thin Air is set in the Himalayas, so it's an expedition. I'm not going to be able to say the name of this mountain, Kangchenjunga. And I think there's like 5 of them that set off on the expedition, and slowly but surely they're all kind of like picked off one by one. And is there something outside the tent, or are we dealing with altitude sickness? You know, what's actually going on? And then the other one's similar. So Dark Matter is an Arctic expedition. So this young lad gets to become part of this expedition team, and they're like camping for a year. I can't remember where they are in the Arctic, but you know, as summer ends and the sort of endless darkness of winter draws in, again, it's that whole, are they dealing with cabin fever, or is there something really joining them in the dark? So because they're short, and my next recs are within the same vein, because they're short, I feel like the payoff is quicker and better, because you're not with the whole story for that long. And I think it's easier to write a scary, shorter story than it is to do that for a long length of time. But I recommend those books to everybody all the time, and they're really, really good. And I wish she'd write more, but she hasn't. And they're probably a good 15 years old, both of those. So yeah, highly recommend.
Maybe that's the key. Maybe it's the short stories, because they can leave you hanging. Like they can leave things unfinished, which maybe is that nice, spooky, unsettled feeling.
Yeah. I'm going to save my thoughts on short stories. You go.
One that I read a little while ago is Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. She's best known for the novel Gone Girl, but I think Sharp Objects, so I've read all 3 of her books. There's Gone Girl, Dark Places, and Sharp Objects. I think she wrote a short story, actually. Oh, what was the short story called? Sorry, I'm going to look it up now. Which was actually very, very spooky and had a great twist. It's called The Grown Up. That was fantastic. Sorry, this is that's a little side recommendation I've just remembered. But Sharp Objects is my favourite of her 3 novels, and one that sort of, I probably read it a good, 5 to 10 years ago. But it stayed with me. So it's about a young girl. I feel like she's in her 20s. Her name's Camilla, and she's a journalist. She's just spent a stint in a psych unit, and on return to work is forced to return to her hometown to investigate the murder of a young girl. She herself is haunted by a childhood tragedy, so it's one of those books where you're slowly finding out what has happened in Camille's life, and she's estranged from her mother, so she ends up back in her childhood bedroom in the family mansion, living with her mother and her half-sister that she barely knows, who is this precocious and unsettling 13-year-old girl who seems to be widely loved by the whole town. What starts off as an isolated incident, this murder, escalates into a series of murders, and she joins the hunt for the killer. And as the case sort of begins to unravel and things get a little bit closer to home, the suspense is very, very well written. One of those books that you're unable to put it down. And I still remember, without spoilers, but this complete sort of goosebump moment, something to do with a doll's house. If you know, you know. If you've read it, you know, which is, very, very spooky. And I've been waiting. So when did that come out? Maybe The Grown Up was the last one she published, 2014. I've been waiting for another book from her. I Googled Gillian Flynn, and the Google people ask question says, will Gillian Flynn ever write another book?
Come on, Gillian Flynn, what are you doing?
We're all waiting.
She probably doesn't need to write another book, in fairness.
I know. But
I've only read Gone Girl. I would like to read particularly, that one you're talking about, Sharp Objects.
Yeah. So Sharp Objects was her first one, 2006, and then it was Dark Places, 2009, and Gone Girl in 2012, and then they made the movie about Gone Girl.
And then she made all her money, and then who needs to write any more
probably
books then?
living a very comfortable,
living
beautiful
a dream
life. Yeah.
There's not many crime novels I'd necessarily recommend, I don't think, but I really liked Gone Girl, and I think the film is very good as well.
Yeah. Well, this was better, I've got to say.
Okay.
The twist in this was better than the twist in Gone Girl.
I'm going to read it. My next set of recommendations, again, because I'm cheating, putting them all in one, but it links to what we were previously talking about, in that I think you can make a short story a lot scarier than a full-length novel. So I've got 3 short story collections to recommend. I am going to recommend Things We Lost in the Fire by Marianna Enriquez. So she is an Argentinian writer, and I think all the stories in that collection are set in Buenos Aires, I think. But she combines, political commentary with horror really, really well. And her stuff is scary. Actually, Sarah read that. When I used to run the Gothic Horror Book Club, we read that collection and Sarah read it. And I don't remember her even commenting on the fact that it was that scary. So I thought that collection was really scary. Now, she has since, I think she's got other short story collections. The covers of her books are beautiful, so I feel like people will recognise. Yeah, she's got a few short... Oh, she might have just brought a new one out. So The Dangers of Smoking in Bed is one of her short story collections. I can see a new one called A Sunny Place for Shady People, which has a very similar cover to the others, which makes me think it's probably another short story collection yet. And then she brought out a novel, her first novel in 2019, called Our Share of Night, and I have it on my e-reader, but it's huge, so I haven't started it yet. I'd love to, but it's one of those books that I'm like, crikey, it's 700 pages or something, so I haven't started that one. And then the other collections, I've got Cursed Bunny. So I feel like this was nominated, maybe even shortlisted for the Booker a few years ago, and this one's like a real mix of quite grotesque stories. It's super varied. There's like body horror in there, folklore, fairy tale stuff, stories about capitalism, the patriarchy, and there's a story in that really has stuck with me. I think it's called The Head, and all I can really remember is this is gross, a mass of like tissue and hair and feces in the toilet that this lady is like talking to her, and she can't like flush it away, and eventually when she does flush it away, it like calls out mother. And I can't even remember what the story's about, but I was like, oh yeah, very unsettling.
Yeah.
So that's a really good collection. And then finally, Kirsty Logan's collection, Things We Say in the Dark, is very good. And there's one section of that. It's sectioned off. So I think the first section is about home. The second section or part is about motherhood. And then the final section is like her experimental stories. And yeah, that's a horror collection. So all of those are, you know, as with any short story collection, there's hits and misses, but that's very good as well. And I remember her, this will become a theme as we carry on through this episode. I remember a story in that collection about a fun fair, like an abandoned fun fair, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, I think short story collections are a really good way to go. If you want to like end your night on something scary, do it with a short story before bed, definitely.
I think years ago, you talked about on the pod the yellow wallpaper. I feel like it's come up a few times, and I found it.
Definitely.
I remember when you initially recommended it. I couldn't find it like as a book. It was like out of print, but there was like a PDF. You can find it on the internet really easily.
PDF.
And so I read it. You know, it's probably, it was like a half an hour, 45-minute read maybe.
Yeah.
And that was years ago, and that's really stuck with me. I think about it all the time. All the time. Just comes into my mind. Yeah, so that's a brilliant one for a bit of a, probably like a bit of a spooky before bed, something that's going to stay in your mind.
I think it works in short stories because you can keep the tension and you can keep the atmosphere for the length of the story. And then anything that is scary that happens within that time frame just always feels particularly scary. But yeah, the yellow wallpaper is great. And there's a particular scene in that the story ends with that, you'll just never forget once you've read it. So yeah, that's a great one. I'll link the PDF. I've found it many times. I'll put it in the show notes again.
Another set of short stories that I haven't actually read, I've got it from the library sitting next to me, but I'm intending to read over the next week, is Shirley Jackson's short story collection called Dark Tales. And you know,
never read it.
We love Shirley Jackson. She's the queen of
Shells.
Gothic horror, the absolute queen. Yes, so I'm very, very, very much looking forward to reading that. So again, maybe this will also do the trick. These short stories, but the classic, of course, as well as a very, you know, I don't have much to say about it. Very short recommendation, but The Haunting of Hill House, I think, is the ultimate spooky haunted house story. And
yeah, I've read that one only the once. I can't really remember it very well.
Was it you or is it Sarah who really loves the We Have Always Lived?
That's me.
In the
and I
castle.
love that one. I've read that one lots of times.
Yeah.
The Haunting of Hill House I've only read once, but I can always remember the spiral staircase leading up to the creepy door at the top.
Yes.
So that's my lasting memory of that one. So I've got one more recommendation. I've definitely talked about this one before as well, but it is a really good one. All of mine are short. This one's short as well. This is probably novella length. Camilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. So this is a Victorian vampire novella, and it's said to have influenced Dracula, which I've also read, and that does have some good spooky bits in it as well, but I think this is much better. It's about a family who, I think they live in quite a big, wealthy home, and a carriage crashes outside their home, and I can't remember the details, but the daughter is left to live with them. I can't remember if she's injured. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Camilla, anyway, is left to live with this family, and the daughter of the family, who's called Laura, is like the main protagonist. Weird things happen with Camilla. Like I feel like Laura used to like dream about her like before they've even met, and strange things happen. But there's really spooky scenes in it. Like there's one particular scene where she's in bed at night and then feels someone like crawling up through the bed covers towards her. So it's full of like just those kind of spooky scenes that really give you the creeps. And I also remember, I mean, obviously as the story goes on you discover that Camilla is a vampire, but there's a scene where they find her oh my god, what are they called? What do vampires lie down in?
A coffin. Coffin.
Yeah. I was like, is it coffin? Do they have a special name?
Oh.
Yeah, anyway, they find Camilla's coffin, and yeah, there's a whole scene of them trying to dispatch of Camilla, should we say. And yeah, it's really good, and it's short, and it's another one that I recommend to people all the time, because I'm like, if you want a quick scary book, that one's really good, and I think far superior to Dracula. It seems to have like spawned off this like loads of sort of lesbian vampire stuff, and I don't remember if it has those kind of vibes in it. I guess because Camilla's like feeding off Laura, and there's scenes of them in bed and stuff, but I don't know if it's intentionally meant to be a queer novel. But yeah, it's really unnerving, really quite gross at times. Yeah, I can see in my old notes that I've said that it inspired a lot of the lesbian vampire tropes like of today. Yeah, it's really refreshing to read something pre all the other vampire tropes that have happened, like blokes. They're always men, aren't they? And they like feeding on blood to retain their youth and that kind of thing. And actually this predates all that, so it feels really fresh for a book that's actually really old. So yeah, it's a really, really good one.
It might, at the time that it was written, it might be as close to the lesbian vampire tropes as was, as was sort of socially
acceptable. Written by a man. Moving on to your one then.
Yeah.
This was recommended by Abby, who's on the pod. If I can get the order of the episodes right, she's on the pod next week. So I've already recorded with Abby. She's the one who recommended this, and I do own it, but I haven't read it. But I had heard how good it is, so I'm intrigued to hear what you thought.
So I don't think I had heard of it, but was able to pick it up from the library. It is called The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. Oh my gosh, I don't even know how to describe this book. You can
She's going to try.
I'm going to try my best. Because I could just read you out what the blurb is, but essentially it feels like one of those books that starts off in the direction that you've interpreted the blurb, you've interpreted, what you've heard about the book. Starts off in one direction, and about halfway through the book becomes a very, very different story. I've got to say, I felt deeply unsettled throughout this book. It's got multiple unreliable narrators who you just deeply mistrust, and you sort of become more and more confused as to what's going on. So it seemingly begins as a story about a child abduction. Yeah, it shifts and changes, and it's about the halfway mark that it becomes clear that whatever grasp you had on the plot line and your suspicions about who was guilty, and does this person have the child? Have they abducted and kidnapped this child, and this child is alive and being kept somewhere, or is this child death? Your suspicions about who's guilty and like the role of each character is just absolutely turned on its head. I feel that it's really hard to say much more without spoiling the plot. But I will say I just felt deeply disturbed, I feel like maybe is the right word, for the first half of the book. It did have an excellent sense of place. So you're sort of introduced to one of I'll say one of the characters is this man called Ted. He's maybe in his 30s or 40s. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that he's definitely painted as somebody who has abducted this child. So he's maybe in his 30s and 40s, and he's a sort of a loner. He doesn't leave his house much. The description of his house is that, all the windows are boarded up. It's dark. It's musty. It's dirty. Somewhere between, like a hoarder house and, yes, disgusting sort of descriptions of what the kitchen looks like, what's on the floor, the things that are in the house, or, what his bedroom looks like. You get the picture that, at some stage you're convinced that this man has stolen this child is alive, but maybe he's not keeping it at this house. There must be another place where he's keeping this child. But I've got to say, I did almost put it down because I felt so kind of revolted by it. And I think that's the sort of horror movies and that I don't really like, when you think about the horrible things that people can do to other people. That's sort of really unsettling.
Interesting.
I don't know. Have you ever read or seen the Stephen King book, or it was turned into a TV show called Mr. Mercedes, I think?
No, I haven't.
I
read a lot of Stephen King, but not that one.
I didn't read it. I watched the show. The first episode, it does hook you, but the first episode was like deeply disturbing. There's like a main event that happens at the whole novel is about, the whole story is about. But that really stuck with me, and I thought about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And the start of this book had that same sort of feeling, like this was this thing that was going to cling to me, and I was going to think about it a lot. Just the setting. So yeah, excellent sense of place, but maybe not the one that you'd want to remember or be thinking about.
Yeah.
But I've got to say, I loved it in the end.
So I remember the hardcover had like
a
house in the background and then a cat
staring
at the street, and I wondered how significant the cat was.
The cat is one of the characters, so it swaps between different views of characters. Okay. So the cat is called Olivia, and so she lives with Ted, and so it's Ted and this cat in the house, and it's an indoor cat. It's not an out, like it's locked in the house with Ted. And so part of the first sort of descriptions of the house, etc., you get from the cat's point of view as well.
Wow. Okay. I did not expect that to be the answer.
One of the characters as well is the older sister of the little girl who went missing. So there's sort of that child abduction sort of is the center of the story. And she has gone to great lengths to try to work out what has happened to her sister. This is, 15 years on, or maybe 10 years on. And she ends up moving into the empty house next to Ted because she becomes convinced that this is where her sister is, that Ted is the kidnapper. And so you've got that element as well. So she's sort of surveilling him but also befriending him and trying to piece together what's happened.
Oh, it does sound good. I own it. It is literally next to my bed, ready to go. So maybe I'll read that next.
I would just say don't be too put off by how disturbed you are at the start, because it does become a better story. Because I sort of was almost putting it down, thinking, okay, where's this going to go? I really don't want to hear about, a child that's been kept in this house for 10 years, if that's really what's happened.
I'm not great with me and my, we'll talk about films in a little while, but me and my sister watch a horror film every weekend, and both of us are not from the hundreds of films we've watched, both of us have realised we're not very good with that kind of gross, disturbing stuff, any kind of exploitation kind of film, like anything that leaves you with that ick. I'm like, I don't need to be here. Thank you. So I have to say that bit does put me off slightly, but if you're saying read past it, then I'm willing to be disturbed for a little while.
I'm trying to think. Okay, yep. So Quite instantly, the novel reminded me of the movie The Voices. Have you seen it with Ryan Reynolds?
No, I haven't.
Okay. That's about a guy who sort of surface level is like a normal guy. He works in an office and he has these talking pets at home. Yeah, so he talks to his dog and his cat. And everything's all fine. It turns out that that he's I'm not going to spoil this because I'm looking at like the little poster for the movie and he's holding a saw that's got blood on it. But it turns out that he has these, like, he gets crushes on women and then he ends up killing them. And he has their heads in his fridge and he talks to them. Like they're decapitated heads, right? So it's all a bit like a comedy. It's a bit fun. It's a bit light. Well, not light, but a bit funny. And it turns out that, he's got, I think he's got like schizophrenia, and at some stage he's forced or sort of, has to take medication, and his apartment, like physically, goes from like this nice looking apartment with his dog and his cat and the heads in the fridge that talk and things in the freezer that talk, and it changes to this like absolutely disgusting apartment with animal feces and like duct taped bits of body parts, and God. You realize that like this has just been all his like fantasy, that he's absolutely coping with what's happened and what he's done. And as soon as he takes the medication and it sort of gets rid of that delusion, it's grotesque and really unsettling. And that is the feeling that I was getting with the description of this house. And sort of
No, that sounds good. It's been on my TBR for a while, and I definitely want to get to that one. So yeah, good recommendation, Abigail Mann. It doesn't strike me as a sort of book she reads, so I'm like I can see why she's recommended it. That sounds good. We're going to move on to some like honourable mentions.
Yes, I thought this might be a nice idea, just because there were a couple. Like, I mean, I guess I already did with The Haunting of Hill House as just I feel like that's up there with your recommendations, but maybe things that didn't quite make it to something that make it to the proper recommendation list. But maybe have a couple of spooky scenes. I'd thought of Annihilation, which we've talked about a lot on the pod, or you've talked about a lot on the pod, Jeff Vandermeer. But that specific scene where they first go down the tunnel.
Yeah, the spiraling staircase.
Yeah, I feel like
it's all quite unnerving, that book, actually.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think it probably is classed as sci-fi horror, I'd have thought. I'd expect it to. The film definitely is quite scary in places too.
Yeah.
In one of our recent episodes, I talk about Cackle by Rachel Harrison, which is definitely has some spooky elements to it. But I haven't read any of Rachel Harrison's other books, but I think they come quite highly recommended. So I was just gonna reel off the other ones. So she's written quite a few now. I don't know what they're all about. So she's got like Such Sharp Teeth, which I think is a werewolf one. Black Sheep, I don't know the storyline of that one. Her newest one's called So Thirsty, which that and the cover makes me think it's probably a vampire book. She's got The Return, Bad Dolls. Yeah, and I'm very keen to read some more of hers. So I'm recommending her based on Cackle, but she's more known as a horror writer, and that was kind of cozy horror adjacent, I guess.
Something that I think we've both read. I actually read it in the last month for the episode, but I think it just didn't quite make it into my recommendations for something scary. But Mother Thing by Ainsley Hogarth has an excellent ending, but I can't say anything because I'm just going to spoil it. I'll have to talk to you off air about it, Jen.
Yeah. The build up to the ending is quite slow from what I remember.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones you kind of gotta, you might feel like you're persevering with it at some point, is my memory of it.
Yeah, and it's quite shocking. The ending, she does something just pre the ending that's quite shocking, and then there's a resolution, and I just feel like it was a very missed opportunity to make it quite a very unsettling ending. I'll just leave it there. But I think it's more like a bit of like a comedy, horror. I don't know. How would you describe it?
Yeah.
What genre is it?
It's
like,
I think it falls into that weird contemporary fiction genre. Yeah, the ending is wild. That's all I can describe it as, really. You don't see it coming until it happens, and I'm like, with hindsight, I might have seen some of this building.
Yes.
But yeah, I did really enjoy that one. I would like to read her new one, which I'll just quickly look up.
I didn't know she had a new one.
Covers of her books have like 50s style housewives on the front.
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, Normal Women, her new one's called.
Oh, is it a spooky or?
I mean, if you look at the cover,
the cover with the lady with like the blood on her shoulder. Is that the one you're looking at?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a bit creepy.
That's the UK version. Yeah. So yeah, it looks. I reckon it'd be a similar vein, or I'll be really disappointed. One or the other.
The little Guardian blurb that I can see on Google says, "Normal Women" is a novel about a depressed and unfulfilled new mother who seeks meaning in sex work.
Oh, okay.
Darkly comic story about how we value female labour and don't. Yeah.
That does sound good. Yeah, I did like her first one, so I think I will read that at some point. What else have I got? Oh, yeah, I was thinking about putting this in my main recommendations. Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Now, I think Ray Bradbury might be slightly problematic, possibly a racist. Okay. That book, I don't know if it's technically YA, but I mean, it was written ages ago. I want to say 70s. Oh no, okay, 1962. So yeah, it was written a long time ago. So I think it's YA, but like from the 60s. So I find that YA doesn't really read the same as what contemporary YA. It's about a fair or carnival that comes to town, and it follows two teenage boys who are more and more drawn in to this carnival and the master of the carnival, I guess. And it's very creepy. I guess it covers coming of age, aging in general. Something weird happens with the carousel. I remember a scene with like the haunted mirrors type thing. Yeah, it's another one that's quite unsettling, and the characters from the carnival are unsettling, and it's a really good Halloween read, I'd say. His writing is beautiful, so a lot of the complaints of it is that the writing is too kind of flowery, although I wouldn't describe it as flowery. Yeah, I'd say it's quite poetic, which for a YA novel is probably fairly hard going, I reckon, for teenagers. But yeah, it's good. And I think that carnival fairground setting, like I've already previously mentioned, that Kirsty Logan uses it as well. There is something quite unnerving about the fun times at the carnival. Yeah, so that's a really good one. I was just going to do one last honourable mention, and that's to recommend the author Grady Hendrix, who writes kind of, I guess, quite camp horror. His stuff's really good fun. If you just want a good time, I really recommend Grady Hendrix. I really liked the Southern Book Club's Guide to Vampire Slaying, I think is the title. I always get that wrong. And I like My Best Friend's Exorcism. And he's also written one called Horror Store, which if you get hold of the physical copy, it looks like an IKEA catalogue. And I feel like it's set in, I guess, the equivalent of IKEA, like a home store quite type place. Yeah, so I really like him. He's good fun. He's quite prolific. I haven't read everything of his. I have also read the Final Girl Support Group, which I didn't love as much. So I think maybe because he is such a prolific writer, there's a few hits and misses, but his stuff is generally very good fun, so I would recommend his. Before we go on to movies, I've got a very quick list of the books that our listeners recommended. So obviously Last House on Needless Street was one. The Small Hand by Susan Hill. I've only ever read The Woman in Black, which is good. It's creepy. The Exorcist was recommended. Now, I've heard that the book of The Exorcist is really good. And this recommendation came with our listener saying that it's the only book that's ever scared her. So I'm going to give The Exorcist a try. That is by William Peter Blatty, if you're trying to find it. And then another one that I thought was interesting, we were recommended Killing Jericho. Now, I've looked this up, and it looks like it's the first in a series of crime books about a disgraced former detective, aren't they always?
Love it.
But this one is set in a fairground setting.
Ooh.
So I was like, ooh, I'm intrigued. And yeah, it's got quite good reviews. And actually, I do love a crime detective series, especially troubled crime detectives. So it sounds quite good.
I feel like they have to have some sort of...
it was funny that it had a fair setting.
They have to have some sort of dark past that comes out.
So yeah, I thought that sounded quite good.
Oh, great.
A gothic helter-skelter thriller debut. It introduces crime fiction's first ever traveller detective, Scott Jericho. So there you go.
It says, fresh out of prison, former detective Constable Scott Jericho is a desperate man. Ooh.
We love a desperate man. So yeah,
I'm going to give that one.
I was like, oh, intriguing.
Look.
Yeah.
Great recommendation.
I thought it would pique our interest because we haven't sort of, it's different to everything else we've talked about. We've been recording for a while.
It's been a very long time.
All good.
And I feel like there's a lot of time of us just typing and trying to remember the names of things.
I can throw that 10 minutes of faffing around. But that's fine. Come on, let's do film. Let's end on the film. You go first. I can rattle mine off.
Okay. I'm just gonna. I'll keep it quick. Keep it short. The scariest movie I've ever seen is Hereditary, and I saw it in cinemas with some friends, and it is still true that it is the worst decision that I have ever made in my life was to see that movie in the cinema. I've never been more scared in my life. And I almost walked out, but I was too embarrassed
really?
I was too embarrassed to walk out, but I was
sat there with your eyes closed.
I watched my friend for like many moments, but I also it was sort of one of those like peeking through your fingers. I definitely should have just watched it on a laptop screen. It was way too immersive. And just one of those as soon as, what is it, like 15 minutes into the film when something happens?
Yes.
Suddenly I realised that I had no idea what the film was about. Because
you'd let yourself in for.
Yeah, because you go into it, I think the trailers, it was like a creepy little girl, and I was like, okay, it's going to be a movie about a creepy little girl. Maybe she's going to be possessed or something, like that's going to be it.
Yeah.
And then something happens and I was like, oh, shit.
I'd like to leave now, please.
I have no idea what this movie is about. We're only 15 minutes in. And Toni Collette was fantastic.
She's really good in it.
Something about her face and like her screaming, like that, the face she makes when she screams, that's in my mind. That's stuck in my mind.
Yeah. It's quite sad as well. That one, as well as scary.
It is.
It's actually that is a very scary film. Me and my sister so quite like Ari Aster, who's the director of that, and I like Midsummer, which is quite different to Hereditary. But Hereditary has a moment that my sister likes to refer to, and it isn't the moment you're talking about. It comes later towards the end. My sister likes to refer to these moments in horror films as a shit the bed moment, which basically means that the film's kind of like lost its mind. Like you think it's going somewhere and then you're like, oh, okay, this is just complete, like, what are you doing? It has a moment towards the end where it is the scariest film I've ever seen, and then it shits the bed. And you're like, oh god, okay, what were you thinking?
And that is exactly why
the ending's just a bit bonkers.
Yeah. It is the worst decision I've ever made to go and see that in cinemas. Not just to watch the movie. I could have watched it on a laptop. You know, you're in your bed, you're a bit cozy, it's okay. But fully immersed, kind of up close to the screen as well.
Yeah.
There was no escaping.
It's a very unnerving film.
Yeah.
The little girl makes like clicking noises with her tongue, which, it's little things like that. You think, why is this so scary? But it is. I'd agree. That's a very scary film. My recommendations are not so scary. I have seen so many horror films. I'm quite numb to them. But I know that these ones aren't super scary.
I do wonder whether books are less scary to us because we've been numbed by movies.
Maybe.
I do wonder. Like, I was wondering when I was constantly going, no, not scary enough. No, that's not scary.
Yeah. I wonder if a film, because obviously you've got the story and you've got the plot like a book would have, but also you have the visual and you have the soundscape going on as well. Like, it is that full immersion that I don't think a book can do.
Yeah.
I wonder if horror audiobooks might be scarier. But yeah, I've got a few recommendations. They're not overly scary. Actually, 2 of them are not at all. Me and my sister have decided that I think our favourite genres are like the silly, fun horror genres. So I've got a couple of those. But I've got one slasher to recommend, and seeing as we're coming towards Christmas, it's a Christmas one. It's called Black Christmas, and it came out in the 70s, and it's about a sorority house. Someone's killed in the sorority house, and the killer is in the house somewhere. It's like the first of its the killer is calling from the same house as you type films. The phone calls that they get are genuinely one of the most disturbing things I think I've ever heard. So the phone calls that this guy makes to the house and that they have to like listen to are really unsettling, but otherwise it is just kind of a fun slasher film, really. Another one, which is another Christmas film. It's a Christmas musical zombie film. It's called Anna and the Apocalypse. It's really good fun if you can find it. It is this like almost like High School Musical style zombie film. And I probably don't need to say any more than that. It's set at Christmas horror zombie musical. What more could you want? That one's great fun. Another one that's really good fun, also a zombie film, is One Cut of the Dead. So I think it's either Japanese or Korean. You got to bear with the first 15 minutes of it. So the first 15 minutes of it, you'll feel like you're watching this really crap, low budget, one cut zombie film. And I was sat there thinking, what am I watching? And then it suddenly finishes. So like 15 minutes in, the credits roll. And I was like, Katie, what is happening? Like, it can't be finished. We've got an hour of the film left. And I won't say any more than that, other than the rest of the film is basically revealing what happens behind the scenes of that one cut zombie film that they've made. And it is brilliant. I've only watched it recently, but it's one of the best horror films I've ever seen. And it's not scary. It's kind of silly. And then I'd say that my favourite horror films, I find it really hard to decide, but my favourite horror films are classics, which is why I've not gone into them in too much detail, but I love The Shining and I love The Blair Witch Project. I'm a child of the 90s. If you watch The Blair Witch Project and find it the least scary thing you've ever seen, well, I can't help you because I think it's great. So
it is one of the I have such a mixed relationship with scary movies because I love them, but I also regret watching them often. And
yes,
Blair Witch at the time, a bit scary. It's fine. But I think where the scariness of Blair Witch kicks in is the next time you are in the woods,
or a tent,
or a tent, or like the bush, or a forest, and it's starting to get dark. I had this strange experience when I was like a teenager with a group of people walking in Thailand through like a forest area because we're trying to get to a waterfall. It was a bizarre story, but we were walking along this road and there were thin trees like surrounding us, just a forest of thin trees, and there were things hanging in the trees that were very
that's very Blair
Witchy. And I think the group of us all had the same feeling, like, the same sort of Blair Witch vibe, and we turned around and just like silently sprinted, and it is the most scared I've ever been. But yes, that, and again, then regret watching that. If I'd never watched it, probably wouldn't be as scared.
The regret comes later. Cool. Well, this is going to be a really long episode and I have to edit it, so I'm going to wrap up.
Have fun. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thanks everyone for listening. There are obviously loads of ways you can get in touch with us with questions, ideas, feedback, or recommendations. You know, what's the scariest book you've ever read? Email us on the Bookcast Club at outlook.com, or you can get in touch on Instagram or TikTok where we're at Bookcast Club. Sign up to our newsletter on Substack for even more reviews, new releases, podcast recommendations, and updates on the pod. You can check out our Patreon. You can have a 7-day free trial, and our cheapest tiers get you access to all our bonus content. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening, and have a spooky Halloween.
Happy Halloween.